This is Steve Saltwick. Welcome to a short summary of my six-part seminar, Your Brain, A Personal Tour. In the next 20 minutes or so, I'll present the overall highlights of this seminar. If you're interested in delving deeper, a link to the full seminar is presented at the end. The topic today is your brain, a creation of Mother Nature that's as complex as the galaxy we live in. With 85 billion processors, called neurons, your brain dwarfs the world's largest supercomputer. That supercomputer might have 10 million or so cores, but in reality, your brain dwarfs that by factors of thousands. Boy, oh boy, can Mother Nature cook. We've studied the brain for over 4,000 years, beginning in ancient Egypt, and that's where the first written symbols for the brain were forged. It was part of a surgical papyrus that was shown in the opening video of this presentation. My task today, simply put, is just to summarize those 4,000 years of research in 20 minutes or so. I began my study of the brain long, long ago in what seems like a galaxy far away. I was a PhD student at the University of Texas in biopsychology, the study of the biological basis of learning and memory. It was an exciting time in my life, and I was thrilled to publish in the journal Science. However, nobody seemed to be getting jobs. Since I could program computers, I sat out into the high-tech world of 1978, if you could call it a high-tech world back then. It was a great ride for a while. After an early retirement in 2012, I returned to my inner professor at UT and constructed my seminar. I offer 5 summary insights. The first is that there's a clear difference between sensing something and perceiving something. The rule of thumb is that you sense stuff like lines, geometric shapes, etc., but you perceive, that is, become conscious of, objects, like, say, for example, Jennifer Aniston. We have found single cells in a brain which perceive Jennifer Aniston. Jennifer in different clothes, Jennifer in different hairstyles, full face, profile, even the spoken words Jennifer Aniston would set this cell off. This is clear evidence that your brain can construct and remember incredibly complex objects across a wide variety of sensory modalities. Similar results have been detected in other brains for Homer Simpson, Tom Cruise, Oprah Winfrey, the list goes on. Your brain is not born that way, it learns to perceive those objects. A 6-week-old baby senses only line segments, so these two figures are judged the same, since the horizontal lines are the same and this line are the same. But by 14 weeks, the babies have grouped the lines into angle objects, and therefore these two groups are judged the same since this angle and that angle are the same. Your brain can also have an argument over perception. In this slide, your visual system is telling your brain that the orange circles are of different sizes. But if I ask you to reach for the objects with your thumb and forefinger, your finger separation will be exactly equal, which is the truth. So, then, how does your brain decide how to act? Well, in deciding how to act, it's just like passing a bill through Brain Congress. And yes, to foreshadow, it can have all the hallmarks of the current mess in Washington that we call Congress. More on that later. To see this in action, we need to see a rat think. A rat knows where it is using GPS-like cells called hippocampal place cells. The hippocampus is a structure in the base of your brain about the size of your little finger. It is intimately involved in learning and memory. Turns out there are cells in the hippocampus that get active when the rat is in a particular place. In this S-shaped maze, for example, there would be a cell that is active when the rat is in the yellow part of the maze, and a different cell that would be active when the rat is in the orange part of the maze. That's why we call these cells place cells. When a rat actually moves along the path, as shown on the right of this slide, there would be separate cells in the hippocampus tracking the rat's progress through the maze. We have them color-coded here. Purple leading to green, leading to yellow, then red. Over the course of several seconds, as the rat moves along the path, we would see each cell in sequence become active. But that's not the only time these cells fire in sequence. It turns out there are times when the cells fire in sequence, but only for a tenth of a second, far too short for physical movement to occur. That is the rat thinking about the path. In this instance, the rat is essentially mentally time traveling. When the rat faces a choice point, he can go either right or left in this example. The hippocampal cells fire in a sequence for turn right and then in a sequence for turn left. There's another part of the rat brain that is voting on each choice based on experience. When that vote gets above a certain threshold, the thought about behavior gets committed to actual behavior, as shown in red here on the right-hand side, and all other potential behaviors are suppressed, as shown in blue here. I speculate that this is why obsessive-compulsive people use inoffensive behaviors, for example, hand-wringing, to keep them performing offensive behaviors, because the inoffensive behavior suppresses the offensive behaviors. You can also see a hung congress in these environments, which is shown when an animal starts to do one thing and then switches back to another and then back and forth and back and forth. Normally, this is called trial and error behavior, and you and or the rat and unfortunately Congress are just about the same on that sometimes. Now, if the rat or you want to learn this maze, then she's got to form a memory. One of the most surprising things we now know about memories is the role of sleep. It transforms memories. Memories come in two basic flavors. One type is centered around you, rich, detailed about some action. Let's try squeezing a tube of toothpaste, for example. Many of you may well have memories of squeezing toothpaste tubes, sometimes like this, and perhaps other times like that. After experimenting with a variety of positions, you ultimately decide on a rule. Squeezing from the bottom works best. You can then use that rule to evaluate situations you've never seen before, like this version of a squeeze machine. This rule is the second type of memory, not connected to you, but abstracted into a multi-use rule. So how does one memory get transformed into the other? Sleep. Memories move around in the brain, and we find that sleep is the main transitioning agent for this movement. This is also the essence of how your brain gains insight. So the next time your kids or grandkids are cramming for a test, tell them to get some sleep. It just might help them a lot more than bleary-eyed staring at the books. We've also learned a lot about how your brain has evolved. Mother Nature was kind enough to give primates, including humans, greatly expanded brain areas. And to do what? Well, basically to eat fruit in a tree. Here is a typical land animal on the left. Eating. Grab the food in your paws and start chewing. Rather simple. Now contrast that with a typical monkey or primate eating. The monkey has got to grab the fruit in a very complex 3D space. The limb he is on is moving. The branch he is reaching for is moving. In addition, the foraging for that fruit is an extremely complex social process. The social strategy of how to search for food leads to the formation of in-groups and out-groups. They can be helpful sometimes and unhelpful other times. Scientists now believe that the areas of your brain that greatly expanded over evolution, shown here in yellow, mostly relate to the rigors of foraging for fruit in trees. Now, having grown that great big expanded brain, how do you protect it? Well, it turns out there's a pretty simple strategy with two parts. First, do what nuns do, and second, do what your parents told you to do. What do I mean by that? Well, the brain damage most people are afraid of is Alzheimer's disease, or AD for short. It's the number one concern of aging adults, and any family it touches is substantially affected, if not overwhelmed. The disease is pernicious. It affects the brain decades prior to presentment. Today, once you're diagnosed, it's almost too late. your brain has passed to the point of no return in most cases. But nuns to the rescue. There have been multiple studies with nuns that show a clear path for hope in lowering the risk of AD. Cognitive reserve. Think of it like muscle strength, but for your brain. The constant lifestyle of nuns over multiple decades have allowed scientists to detect lifestyle patterns which prevent or materially lessen the impact of AD. Have a rich mental life is the excellent way to lower your risk of AD. So we don't have to do everything a nun does or doesn't do, just ensure we have a rich mental life. We truly do owe them thanks not only for their charity, but for their assistance in advancing science. You can also lower your risk of AD by growing new brain cells. Growing new brain cells is called neurogenesis. We see here a typical timeline for doing just that. But how do we do that? Well, there's a couple of proven ways. The first is exercise. If there's a silver bullet for lowering your risk of AD, then this is it. Study after study has shown positive impact of aerobic exercise, regardless of when you start, even as they say here euphemistically, later in life. And this exercise does not necessarily mean competing in the gym with a bunch of millennials. Tai Chi, especially in groups, has been shown to be effective. There really is no excuse not to do this. If not for your blood pressure, then for your brain. The other method that's been shown helpful in growing new brain cells is the consumption of DHA. Now, many of you already take fish oil, and good on you for that. My point here is that most research is done with DHA from algae, as shown here on the right. So you can absolutely buy the cheap stuff. It does not need to come from happy fish. The search for effective drugs for AD has been replete with failures. Promising drugs are found, yet fail in extended tests. However, I'm optimistic. Dozens of drugs are in large-scale tests. Surprising progress is coming from unexpected sources. For example, common diabetes drugs now show promise. Using ultrasound to allow drugs to pass the blood-brain barrier is opening new pathways of delivery. I do believe we will see effective drugs that can help our children, or at the very least our children's children. Of note is the very recent finding that memories in AD may not be erased, just irretrievable, and hence may be restorable. I want to briefly touch on one other exciting area of research, the stuff in your gut, the microbiome. Amazing progress is being made in understanding the importance of the over 10,000 species of bacteria in your gut, and the progress is dramatic. For example, the type of bacteria in your gut is a major determinant of the effectiveness of the newest cancer drugs. But for the purposes of today, I want to emphasize the link between the gut microbes and AD and Parkinson's disease. Recent research has shown that both of these diseases can be caused by the transfer of bacteria from the gut to your brain, most probably using the vagus nerve. This means that what you eat can really affect your brain. And now we get to the second rule of brain health. It's just what your mom told you to do again and again and again. Eat right. That means your vegetables. That means drink your milk. Man, oh man, was she right. Gut bacteria health is dramatically linked to the consumption of probiotics and prebiotics. Probiotics are microorganisms that promote health in general, but here we emphasize brain health. They are most effectively consumed via fermented foods, yogurt, kimchi, and sourdough, to name a few. Prebiotics are food for the probiotics. They're shown here on the left. Getting a good diet of these foods can keep your brain healthy and you wealthy and wise for your whole entire life. The final section of the talk today is to show how your brain can help the rest of your body recover from trauma. Significant and accelerating progress is being made here. In some cases, they are nothing short of miraculous. The seminal research was done in just 2008 by Andrew Schwartz at the University of Pittsburgh. His lab was the first to connect a monkey's brain via a computer directly to a robot hand. The monkey quickly realized all he needed to do was think about moving the arm, and the arm moved. The monkey seemed to assume the expression of Yoda, and the name Jedi Monkey was coined and has stuck ever since. The advance in 10 years has been nothing short of stellar. For example, let's meet Leslie Baugh. Leslie is a former electrician who lost both arms in an accident many years ago. Using the techniques refined from the Jedi Monkey work, researchers at the Johns Hopkins Institute have fitted Leslie with a vest of 2 robotic arms. Leslie's driving goal is to live independently, and the talisman of that is to put coins into a soda machine and then lift out the can. He is well on the way, and isn't that awesome? In summary, let me give you 5 key takeaways from this brief overview. The first is always remember that perceiving a complex object like Jennifer Aniston or Ryan Gosling is the sign of an advanced brain. Oversleep someday? Well, just say you had some extra memories to transform. That will always work as long as there's some scientist in the audience. And yes, you do have a big brain, but don't get cocky. Remember that most of it is for eating fruit in a tree. I know it's hard to admit it, but your parents were right about eating right. And while we're at it, never forget nuns are awesome at brain health. And then finally, always celebrate the progress being made at understanding the most complex entity humanity has encountered to date, your brain. So take a neurobiologist out for a drink or invite them to give a talk. I close with a look at my 6-part seminar. Today has been a sampling of the essential parts of that 6-part seminar. Each seminar is about an hour in length. It's in the same style as that we presented today. These are public videos on YouTube, so rather than giving you a long, complex playlist pointer, all you got to do is search on YouTube for Your Brain, a Personal Tour, and you'll be presented with this agenda of courses. I hoped you liked the overview today, and I certainly encourage you to delve farther and wider into the most fascinating subject, I think, in science today, your brain. This is Steve Saltwick. Thank you for your time and your attention.